Simone Biles is a legend in her prime. Simone Biles redefines the limits of perfection. Simone Biles primed to win big at the Olympics. Simone Biles is the greatest of all time. These are all real headlines written by prominent media outlets about US gymnast Simone Biles in the build-up to the 2021 Tokyo Olympics. Notice a trend? There's a grandiosity, an implication that Simone is destined, that her victory is inevitable. We see this throughout sports, but nowhere more so than the Olympic Games, with its focus on individual events and us versus the world dynamic. Athletes are heroes, and their victory is expected. When Simone ultimately made the shocking choice to back out of the team competition in Tokyo, citing a lack of spatial awareness while performing her routines, the reactions were polarized. Some said she was weak, letting down her country and robbing others of the opportunity to compete on the biggest stage. Others said she was admirable, an icon for mental health and prioritizing herself over all else. Both of these reactions, while seemingly opposite, have one striking point in common. They're built upon the same narrative as all the headlines. Simone as superhuman, unstoppable. On one side, she failed to live up to the mantle. On the other, she recast it. Simone either way must conform to her role as the hero and deliver an inspirational moment. If you look closely though, you'll notice there's something wrong with this narrative. It's simple. Too simple. It's that of a Greek myth, not the story of a complex human being. Certainly not a human being like Simone Biles, who overcame a turbulent childhood, battled an abusive system, and proved herself repeatedly on the world stage, all the while lending her cogent voice to some of the biggest issues of our time. The coverage just doesn't do her justice. So, is there something wrong with narratives? To turn our sporting stars into heroes, legends, icons? I'm hoping to persuade you that there's not. The problem comes when we throw our humility away, rely on lazy, impossible to live up to tropes while casting aside the complicated reality, when we push our oversimplified story at the expense of history that's still being written, when we turn a person into a character and refuse to let them make their own destiny, then get all upset when they diverge from our pre-planned script. This is what the media did to Simone Biles. And this is something we all could learn from. Because Simone, she doesn't need our lazy narratives. She's excellent enough on her own. If we just let her do her thing, she'll write our amazing story for us. Sports are pretty boring. Or should I say, sports on their own are pretty boring. They consist of some simple, repeated action like hitting a ball or running a certain distance, to which we ascribe well-defined rules. What makes sports interesting is the stories we tell about them. Simone's story started in Columbus, Ohio. Her birth parents struggled with alcohol and addiction, and her father left the family when she was still a baby. According to Simone, her biological mother Shannon would often feed the stray cat that wandered into their house instead of her own kids. Since Shannon couldn't take care of her 4 children, they were placed in foster care, before being adopted by Simone's maternal grandfather Ron and his wife Nellie. Now living in the calm Houston suburb of Spring, Texas, Ron and Nellie became mother and father to Simone, who would put her boundless energy to use by running around outside. At the age of 6, Simone and her daycare went on a field trip to a local gym, where she saw older girls practicing gymnastics. Astounded by their impressive movements, she attempted them for herself right then and there, and apparently did a pretty good job. The coaches wrote a letter home, begging Ron and Nellie to get Simone involved in gymnastics. It seemed like the perfect fit for her. After a few years training under Coach Amy Borman at Bannon's Gymnastics in Houston, Simone made her debut in elite-level competition in 2011. At the 2012 US Classic, she won both the vault and all-around, and then followed this up in all-around again at the National Championships, securing her spot on the junior national team. She narrowly missed out on the 2012 London Olympics, but only because she was a few months too young to satisfy the age requirement. The steep price of success that young gymnasts pay to compete at an elite level is often underappreciated. Simone made the difficult choice to forego many childhood and young adult experiences in order to pursue her athletic dreams. When entering high school, also in 2012, she chose to drop out of public school, leaving behind her friends and in-person social life in order to be homeschooled, freeing up time to increase her training schedule from 20 to 32 hours a week. Gymnastics, one of the most physical and dangerous sports in existence, required her to constantly put her body on the line. She suffered numerous injuries as an amateur, including tibial bone spurs and a serious shoulder issue. Despite earning a scholarship to compete collegiately for UCLA, she gave up college to turn professional, another decision prioritizing her career over her personal life. All this, it seemed, was the cost of doing business.
Well, I wasn't smiling earlier, I was pretty much crying, but no, I cried it all out, so I'm good.
On the mat, Simone was all business. After working with a sports psychologist to overcome some unfortunate falls which plagued the early part of her 2013 campaign, she rebounded by winning the US National Championship that same year and making the senior national team. Representing Team USA at the World Championships in Antwerp, Belgium, she dominated en route to winning the all-around, beginning a streak of winning every single all-around competition she entered that would last all the way up to the Tokyo Olympics in 2021. 2014 US Championships, 2014 World Championships in Nanning, 2015 US Championships, 2015 World Championships in Glasgow, 2016 US Championships. Simone won them all. Aside from the all-around, she won golds in balance beam as well as floor. Along the way, recognizing the potential to push the limits of the International Federation of Gymnastics scoring system, she began pioneering new skills so difficult that no other athlete could do them, or in most cases even try. Among these was the eponymous Biles, a double layout with a half twist on floor, which she invented in the midst of battling a knee injury. When the 2016 Rio Olympics came around, Simone had just one arena left in which to compete. Though she was new to the most revered event on the world stage, the world already seemed to know who she was. She appeared in several national ad campaigns in the United States, and was designated as one of the faces of the Games, an enormous spotlight for a teenager in just her first Olympics. Despite the massive expectations, she responded well, leading the US to a victory over the Russians in the team competition, and securing individual golds on vault and floor. Including her gold in the all-around, Simone set the record for the most golds won by an American women's gymnast in a single Olympics, and was given the honor of flag bearer for the closing ceremony.
The Olympics, I was just out there and I was like, okay, let's go, let's do this. It didn't feel like the Olympics at all.
Simone looked to be on top of the world. Behind the scenes though, she was going through it. No matter how bright the glistening gold medals, they were nowhere near bright enough to shine out the dark shadow of USA Gymnastics, an organization which had long prioritized success over the well-being of the vulnerable young girls in its care, who gave everything they had to the sport. In January 2018, Simone revealed on Twitter that she was one of many athletes sexually abused by former USA Gymnastics team doctor Larry Nassar. By lending her powerful voice to the allegations, she gave a platform to the other victims, and set the perpetrators of these heinous crimes on a path towards justice. Then in 2019, Simone's brother Tevin was charged with murdering 3 people at a New Year's Eve house party in Cleveland. In the wake of the killings, she said that her heart ached for the victims, and that she was still having trouble processing the horrific news. During such a painful and emotionally intense time, Simone found an outlet in a familiar place: the gym. Despite being checked into the hospital emergency room the night before the 2018 World Championships in Doha for suspected appendicitis, which turned out to be a kidney stone, she stormed through the field, becoming the first US women's gymnast to win medals in every single event at Worlds. The next year in Stuttgart, she repeated the feat, only this time all 5 of her medals were gold. Having debuted 2 more eponymous skills, the Biles on balance beam and the Biles 2 on floor, Simone was truly pushing the boundaries. To excel at gymnastics at the elite level requires, like any sport, a huge amount of sacrifice. However, what many casual fans do not appreciate is that doing so also requires extreme risk. Gymnasts routinely fling themselves at high speeds, push the laws of physics, defy the very survival instincts which would scare most of us away from attempting such feats. To land even one of the most difficult skills in competition is an accomplishment. To land it repeatedly, miraculous. If you don't have absolute confidence in yourself and your ability to stick the landing, you shouldn't even try. Sometimes you fall, but so long as you get up, you'll try again. Simone, despite the falls and the toll they took on her, kept getting up. Interviewed in 2019, she admitted that constant pain was just something she lived with, saying, "It feels weird if I'm not in pain." 3 times partially torn calf, broken ribs, a shattered toe. Aside from the physical, Simone at times faced anxiety so extreme she couldn't even sleep. None of this stopped her. Once you're already the best, the only way to keep getting better is by stretching the limit. In this case, the limit was the Yurchenko double pike, a skill so dangerous that no female gymnast had ever even attempted it in competition. Not even the Soviet gymnast Natalia Yurchenko, from which it gets its name. Performing 2 full pike rotations while dismounting from the vault, any lapse in timing could result in severe injury. In the points code, it netted a ridiculous 6.6 D score, higher even than the so-called Vault of Death. Despite urging from her coach Laurent Landy not to even consider the skill, Simone couldn't be stopped. After landing it several times in practice, she made a splash in the gymnastics world by executing it successfully at the 2021 US Classic. Battling an ankle injury, she headed to the 2021 Olympics in Tokyo, prepared to do it again.
I feel like if I were to label myself as a superstar, it would bring more expectations on me. I try to represent Simone, not Simone Biles, whenever I go out there, because at the end of the day, I'm still a human being before I'm Simone Biles, the superstar.
Despite the allure of story, there's a reason many prefer to watch sports over movies or TV. Sports have an element of unpredictability. They don't always follow that same well-trodden arc. An improbable upset victory, tripping just a few steps before the finish line. What we as the audience probably enjoy most is being surprised. We may be able to recount these events in reflection, but it's impossible to predict them going in. You'd be forgiven for missing this crucial point if you just watched the coverage of the Tokyo Olympics. After waiting a year due to the COVID postponement, broadcasters, perhaps accustomed to the sports-light pandemic entertainment landscape, treated the games like a TV drama, potentially even more so than usual. American TV network NBC even admitted as much, saying, "The people who watch the Olympics are not particularly sports fans. More women watch the games than men, and for women, they're less interested in the result, and more interested in the journey. It's sort of like the ultimate reality show and miniseries wrapped into one." Aside from the blatant sexism here, you see the core of the problem. Those airing the games care most about telling a good story. Not even a single consideration for what this does to the athletes. Simone had already won everything. But when you're a legend, the greatest, perfection personified, the most compelling story is that you'll do even more. If Simone was one of the faces of the games back in Rio, this time she was the face, plastered over every conceivable TV promo or advertisement. In the absence of marketable stars like Usain Bolt or Michael Phelps, these were the Olympics of Simone. In contrast to the smiling signboards though, her anxiety was again through the roof, and she had started to experience troubling mental blocks in the lead up to the games. She confessed publicly to having backed out from one of her catch and release elements on uneven bars during practice, which she described as having breakdowns, pretending to forget how to do my skills. In competition, Simone knew well by now, there was no backing out. Failing to trust yourself meant putting yourself in harm's way. But Simone was there, the face of her team, the face of her country, and the face of the games. In a broader sense, there was no backing out, even if she wanted to. The rest, as they say, is history. In qualifying, you could tell something wasn't right with Simone. She made all sorts of uncharacteristic mistakes, bouncing her landing on floor, stepping off the mat on her vault dismount, stumbling during her balance beam. Nonetheless, Simone led the US to qualify for the team final, finished all-around qualifying in first place, and qualified for all of the individual finals. If anyone had a margin for error, it was her. But Simone likely knew she was playing a dangerous game. In the warm-ups for the team final, she bailed out of her Aminar vault midway, performing only 1.5 of the prescribed 2.5 twists. In the actual event, despite the bravery to attempt the skill again given what had happened in the warm-up, she bailed midway again. After this, Simone knew she couldn't take the risk any longer. After leaving the competition floor, she later withdrew from the team event, a shocking decision which rattled through the entire sporting world. The problem which forced her hand, she explained later on, was what she called the twisties, a surprisingly innocuous name for such a terrifying phenomenon. Losing all spatial awareness in midair, a gymnast with the affliction, accustomed to absolute control of their movements, is left to the mercy of the forces of gravity. You might imagine it as the feeling of skydiving, only with the added fear of knowing your parachute won't open. Simone made what to her was the only choice.
No injury, thankfully, and that's why I took a step back, because I didn't want to do something silly out there and get injured.
In the wake of her decision to withdraw, many came to Simone's defense, saying that she was an icon for her openness about mental health. Her remarkable move, they suggested, started a long overdue conversation about the pressures we put on athletes and the psychological aspect of performance. If you think about this newly assigned role, however, you can't help but wonder if, in a way, it's just a different version of the same problem. Portraying Simone yet again as a hero for making the brave choice not to compete neglects the fact that the woman herself did not plan it out that way. She likely wanted anything but. If she had it her way, she'd probably be standing on the podium, with several additional gold medals for her collection. During a moment of intense vulnerability, many onlookers recast her as invincible in a different way, ironically dehumanizing her in the midst of a deeply human experience. She said as much in her own words, stating, "See, for me that was the hardest part, because speaking out on mental health, I knew that I could have the possibility of becoming an advocate for that. But it wasn't my goal. It's not what I really wanted." Simone never wanted to be an advocate. If anything, she probably just wanted some empathy. After taking a couple of years away from the spotlight, Simone returned to competition in 2023 and is now attempting a remarkable comeback. She has taken time for herself after the grueling ordeal in Tokyo, and performing again at the highest level, looks like she has put the twisties behind her. If all goes well, she might find herself competing again in Paris in 2024. If she does, you'll probably hear about it in the context of an incredible comeback story featuring a valiant hero. And this story, it's not wrong. It's just simple. It's just incomplete. The problem isn't that we have a narrative. The problem is that we buy into it too much. Value the story we've created over the real living person in front of us. We shouldn't stop telling stories. Though they are subjective and often riddled with flaws, they help us understand the world. But we should always maintain a level of humility, a lack of expectation, letting the facts dictate the stories we tell rather than trying to shoehorn real life into our imagined foregone conclusion. Simone's story is a real one, a complicated one, and nothing about it is foregone. She's exceptional, not because she's a hero, but because she is who she is. It's about time we tell her story in full.